Otis, a miner in Red Creek, continues to dig even after many hours have passed because he needs gold badly. The mines begin to tremble as a total lunar eclipse fills the sky at that precise moment. When Otis touches the glowing hole he created, his hand catches fire. Suddenly, Otis gets possessed by a black cloud that emerges from the hole and burns a circle on his chest and turns his eyes black. Sheriff Roy picks up his daughter Charlotte and her fiancé Angus from the railroad station in Wyoming a month later. Charlotte encourages Roy to put aside his dislike of Angus and stop thinking that his daughter deserves more because Angus helps her feel secure and happy. A group of 5 bandits commanded by Ezekiel abruptly disrupt the reunion and attempt to grab as many bystanders as they can. In the station, Roy conceals Charlotte before slipping behind a stack of baggage to join the gunfight. Roy immediately shoots Zeke when he appears behind him, but as he rolls under the train to pursue the others, Roy is fatally wounded by an unknown assailant. Roy shows up at a strange workplace moments later and pukes into a bucket. Haino, the woman who welcomes him, tells him that Charlotte is okay but that Roy has passed away and is now in heaven. Haino has been hired to work as one of the RIPD's agents, or the Rest in Peace department, in this office. The RIPD, which is God's police department, is tasked with finding deados, or the souls of the dead who have escaped judgment and are causing trouble on Earth by taking possession of regular people. Haino then brings Roy to the armory, where Roy is astonished by the high quality of the weapons but decides to continue with his go-to firearm. Haino draws attention to the fact that only RIPD's holy weapons can harm deados. Haino reveals that the snake symbol Roy sees on the floor after selecting a weapon is the Ouroboros, which stands for life, death, and rebirth. The symbol will show up on a person's breast whenever a deados has them under its control. Haino tells Roy that his first task is to investigate a strange entity that surfaced in Red Creek during the eclipse and explains that returning to Earth will entail sticking to the investigation rather than seeking retribution for his own passing. Roy spits on Haino's hand and shakes it to clinch the bargain, but still accepts. Roy feels the RIPD's emblem burn into his skin at that precise time, causing his chest to begin to burn. Haino then places Roy in a device that returns him to Earth. Roy appears inside a portable bathroom and pukes again before stepping back to avoid a herd of passing buffalo. He then tries to exit, but is struck by the final bison that was left. Roy is suddenly joined by a woman and 2 horses. Here is Jean, a fellow RIPD with whom Roy will collaborate on the Eclipse case. Roy likes to work alone, but Jean constantly reminds him that he must follow orders. Jean has also been deceased for 445 years, so she can help Roy go through his first dead day on Earth. This does not persuade Roy any further, and he rides off. In the meantime, Ezekiel and his group are stealing a bank, but they are abducting more individuals rather than taking the money. Zeke is extremely annoyed by the thief Slim's faults because the 5 thieves are all brothers, but Slim was adopted. When law enforcement shows up, there is a gunfight, and Slim is helpless to protect himself. Returning to Roy, he goes back to the house to see his daughter, but Jean yanks him away just as he starts to yell Charlotte's name through the window. Roy fights Jean out of rage and finds that his reflexes are far faster than they were while he was living. When both agents simultaneously draw their weapons, the conflict is declared a draw. Jean then makes Roy see his reflection with her blade. It turns out that Roy no longer appears the same. To outsiders, he and Charlotte appear to be 2 black women. Jean explains that seeing the dead come back would be too confusing for people, which is why the illusion conceals their identities. Roy learns that he has been buried close to his wife and that Coyote stole his body after he was shot. Jean informs out that if God allowed Roy to believe that illusion, it was because he wanted Roy to learn something. Roy believes that being a black woman will really make his work much harder due to racism and misogyny. Finally, she warns Roy that anything he attempts to say to his loved ones would come out as unintelligible nonsense. They decide to use the lie that they are bounty hunters as a cover. Henry, Roy's best buddy and the person who delivered the flowers for the graves, interrupts their talk. Roy pretends to be silent as Jean and Henry converse, but he finds it difficult to hear Henry's praise and criticism of him. Next, Henry updates them on the state of affairs in the community. Angus has been abducted by the bandits, and while 3 gang members were apprehended at the bank, 2 are still at large. Roy disregards Jean's reprimand when she points out that this isn't his mission since he wants to save Angus so his daughter won't be left alone. Roy wants to find out where Angus is from the marshals who are transporting the 3 apprehended bandits on a neighboring road in a cage. Due to the fact that Roy accidentally shot Zeke back at the station, he is perplexed as to why Henry claimed there are still 2 bandits at large. Jean realizes the bandits have the Ouroboros sign on their chests, indicating this is part of the mission and she can help after all, when the marshals halt the carriage so they may use the restroom. 2 marshals follow Jean as she goes up to the officers to ask for assistance because his sister has been harmed, and they arrive at the location where Roy is feigning unconsciousness. Both agents instantly strike and knock out the marshals before going after the one's back/son horses. Roy hangs onto the vehicle and hops onto its roof while the carriage drivers flee when they realize there is danger. When the marshals stop to check, Roy frightens one by posing as a ghost, and Jean knocks out the other when one of them shoots him and believes he has killed him. Roy tries to open the cage but is unsuccessful, so Jean uses holy water on one of the bandits to painfully release the Diado. The thief changes into a big, dark monster that tries to break out of the cage and attack, but Roy quickly shoots it with his unique weapon. Jean immediately kills the second bandit before grabbing the third one, who turns out to be Slim, after the second one surprised Roy and snatches his gun. Roy finds a number of posters on the ground and learns Slim is wanted for killing him as Jean takes Slim to be questioned. Roy is enraged and strikes Slim, who obviously doesn't know who he is and insists that he is being falsely accused because he never shot anyone. Jean explains to Roy that they need him for hints even though he wants to kill him. Jean then squirts a tiny amount of holy water upon Slim to inflict pain before putting an end to the popping with her cross. Finally speaking, Slim reveals that a ruthless deadhead by the name of Otis has ordered the bandits to kidnap people everywhere and bring them to Red Creek. Slim just knows that the people are in prison. He is unaware of his covert strategy. He also describes how Otis obtained a RIPD weapon. Slim is restrained to the horses as Jean and Roy go to investigate in Red Creek. Roy shoots him with his regular gun whenever he cracks a poor joke, which is simply a tickle to a Diado. In the meantime, a woman by the name of Nell informs Otis that Zeke has added more prisoners to the group, but the bandits are beginning to question Otis' identity and origin. Otis reveals that during the eclipse, the gateway weakened, leading to his escape via a limbo piece. The trapped people must continue excavating because if he completes his plan during the upcoming blood moon, he will permanently weaken the gateway and take control of Earth. After that, Otis goes to check on the most recent prisoners and speaks with Zeke, who is still skeptical of him. The other Deados are sufficiently frightened by Otis' punishment to follow him without question after he grabs the Diado inside of him and shoots it with his RIPD gun. A few hours later, Roy and Jean reach Reed Creek. They conceal Slim's face to prevent him from being recognized due to the poster. The town is almost completely deserted, and the few residents who are present appear to be quite ill, which surprises the gang. Mayor Julius forces them to work despite their illnesses, and because they are so focused on living, they don't even bat an eye when 2 black women show up. The gang then tries to check in at the hotel, but the receptionist is the mayor for some reason. Roy uses his revolver to scare him while Julius points at the sign that reads, "We don't admit black people." Julius eventually sets the sign on fire. Jean turns around as a result because fire makes her PTSD symptoms worse. After that, July summons Beverly the maid and claims he's very tolerant of women and people of color before asking her to lead their new clients to their room. Beverly responds that it began a month ago when Roy and Jean inquire about it in the bedroom. They don't know what makes them ill, and Julius claims that it has to do with the water supply, but no one is willing to accept him. Since last night, when everyone fled in search of the gold that was allegedly discovered in the mines, the town has been deserted. When Beverly has left, Roy and Jean agree that Julius must know something, and Jean gestures toward the mines in the hope that they will discover the solutions there. Speaking of the mines, every kidnapped person who works there dons a mask to prevent contracting the disease that taints the air. When a father passes out, his daughter wonders if she should give him her mask, but Angus warns her that removing it will result in death. He takes off his own to demonstrate this, which causes his entire body to tremble. After that, Angus dons his mask once more and tells the woman that her father simply wants to rest. Julius is ill as well and is staying at the hotel. He unlocks his desk drawer to get a pair of scissors and cuts a piece of the curtain to cover up the blood he is starting to cough up. Julius hurries out of the building, forgetting to lock his desk once more, to meet Otis and request a mask as payment for all the assistance he has been giving. Otis finally agrees to give Julius a mask after much pleading, but he also reminds him that only his workers receive masks, so Otis' men force Julius inside a carriage and tie him up. To prevent Slim from fleeing, Roy and Jean tie him to a bathtub. Slim tries to reassure them that they may put their trust in him because, while he was alive, he was only a robber and did nothing particularly horrible. As Roy approaches, he snatches his gun to demonstrate his point but then hands it back, stating that he had the opportunity to shoot them both but chose not to. Roy wonders if the original Slim might still be alive and well within the body, but Jean says that's impossible and that the Diado is controlling them instead. Roy and Jean go to the church after Slim says the abducted people were brought there, and when they see it in ruins, Jean has a flashback to her prior life. The location appears deserted, but Roy discovers a piece of Angus' clothing, proving that he must be present. The two hurry outside after hearing screaming to locate Julius inside the carriage. Julius informs them that Otis has taken over the entire town and is transporting people to the mine. He also makes reference of creating a doorway. Jean suddenly understands that they are actually excavating a hole into hell, and the noxious gas that emanates from the pit is what sickens people. All of the damned souls will escape the hole once it is large enough and take possession of everyone on Earth. Otis' men provoke a fight after interrupting their talk. Although Roy and Jean make every effort to defend themselves, they are quickly surrounded and defeated. Beverly is also feeling unwell in the meantime. She discovers the curtain hole and the drawer open as she delivers Julius his tea, showing a special order for the printing press. Shaken, Beverly enters Roy's room and releases Slim, demonstrating to him that he was in fact falsely accused and that Julius had bought off the press to fabricate the posters. As soon as Beverly starts coughing up blood, Slim buys her a mask as a token of gratitude for granting him freedom. Before leaving to assist the OIPD, he also shows her the stash of hidden masks that is kept in the chapel for everyone to see. Roy and Jean are taken to the mines, where they surrender their weapons, and placed in a cell. Nell remembers Jean from her earlier days, and Jean tells Roy that Nell was a former RIPD agent who turned rogue. This clarifies why Otis owns a RIPD weapon. A guard brings Angus to the cell at that precise moment, but Angus tries to fight the man off. He is swiftly defeated by additional guards, but Roy is still impressed and admits he was mistaken about Angus. Roy poses as a sweet woman and asks Angus about his marriage while explaining that occasionally dads worry that their daughters' boyfriends are trying to take their place or that they're terrified of being left alone. He is reassured by Angus that he has always respected Roy and that this was never his aim. Roy gives Angus a photo of Charlotte that he always carried with him because the words touched him. When the portal finally begins to open at midnight, Otis tells Nell to collect all the inmates so they may begin the ceremony. Except for Roy and Jean, everyone is taken from the cells by the guards. Nell and Otis then show up to make fun of Roy and Jean for failing. Before leaving, Nell calls Jean Joan d'Arc and Otis informs them that they will be the final people tossed into the pit before the chasm shuts. Roy is proud that Jean would be the person he would choose to collaborate with if he had to, and he finally realizes that Jean is the well-known historical character and comprehends why she is so scared of fire. The portal to hell finally opens after Otis forces the inmates to complete their digging, which allows cursed souls to begin escaping and possessing everybody they can to turn them into demons. For as long as he can, Angus avoids them while assisting others in escaping the mines. Returning to Jean, she informs Roy that in order to close the gate, they must first put out the hellfire. They can utilize that if they manage to escape because she discovered a vial containing the tears of Christ while she was still alive. Slim arrives at that time, and the guards allow him to grab Roy's gun because Slim is meant to be one of them. He genuinely is acting, though, and uses the gun to shoot and murder a guard. Jean reaches through the bars to seize the guard's sword as the other begins to assault him and unintentionally drops it. Slim then presents Roy with the evidence that he was framed and requests a new trial for his soul from Jean since he doesn't believe he deserves to go to hell. The agents agree to put their trust in him, and after Slim releases them, they must devise a strategy. Roy declines because the tears selected her, despite Jean's request to do so because she is unable to approach fire since her death. Roy and Slim pretend that Slim is holding Roy captive as they head to the mines after leaving the tears with Jean. Roy tries to shoot Otis when they see him, but the damned souls act as a shield to stop him. Roy then asks Slim to assist Angus and the other survivors of the humans in fleeing while he battles as the duo starts shooting the deados. As Adiado prepares to attack Julius, Jean joins the fight and kills it. Roy is jumped by another foe, who forces him to roll toward the entranceway while holding him against the ledge. Jean notices the flames and starts experiencing flashbacks of when she died, but her desire to save lives pushes her over the gateway so she can throw the tears into the hole and kill the zombie holding Roy. All the condemned souls, including Nell, are quickly drawn back within as the doorway closes. While Slim and the humans hold onto the jail bars, Roy and Jean hold onto her sword so they won't get absorbed as well. The agents believe the situation is finished when Otis suddenly appears and changes into his true form. It turns out that Otis is Azeroth, the devil's right hand, which explains why he is so powerful. He quickly uses his powers on Roy and Jean, prompting Jean to start crying. The pair fights Azeroth with their holy weapons, but they are ineffective against him, and Azeroth catches them with ease. Roy finds the tears bottle on the ground after Jean uses her crucifix to make him drop them and he is diverted from assaulting her. He doesn't waste any time and immediately shoots Azeroth, killing him permanently. By the time everyone arrives back in town and is reunited with their loved ones, the sun is out. When Slim discovers Julius hiding, he forces him to admit the truth. Julius fled when Otis arrived in town and believed the bandits were after him. Julius shot Roy out of self-preservation since he believed he belonged to the gang, and Zeke then picked him up. Zeke had always been a dead man, thus Roy's bullet had no effect on him. If Beverly can serve as the deputy, Slim will be Roy's choice for the position of sheriff when he thinks the town needs a new sheriff to keep an eye on things. Beverly accompanies Julius to jail after Roy gives his approval. Since Slim has earned their trust, Roy and Jean agree to keep him in this location until his retrial. Roy and Jean then attend the wedding of Charlotte and Angus. Roy is aware that he cannot speak to Charlotte, but for some reason he has also started speaking incoherently to Angus. Jean sends her best wishes their way, and when Roy gives Charlotte a hug, Charlotte feels as though she has known Roy her entire life. Before they depart from town, Jean says that because Roy now accepts Angus, he has now grown to be a loved one, which is why his speech was incoherent. The two leave the portable toilet again and head back to the RIPD office. Jean laughs as Roy claims that while the mission was enjoyable, he is prepared for his spirit to pass on to the hereafter. As it turns out, agents are only given the choice to leave after serving for 100 years. Roy enters the portable restroom, frustrated but still wanting to work with Jean, only to be struck by a bison once more.